Back into the room, then it is my honor to introduce to you our speaker for today, Reverend Valentine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful that you're here, that you're supporting this center. I'm so pleased, and thanks everyone for being part of it and helping with everything, because it's so important that we have a community, a spiritual community. So if you found out my title, it's The Frequency of the Soul. But before I want to talk about that, the frequency part, I want to talk about the soul, because we are all body, soul, and spirit. So that is something that we all have, that frequency of the soul. So I'd like to go over some ideas of what the soul really is and how we are affected by it. Our soul reflects the sum total of who we are. Our soul is the link between our spirit and our body. It's the operating system in our life. Our soul encompasses our mind, our will, our decision to be making progress in our life, and our perception of our reality, whatever that reality is for us. Our soul influences our emotions and our feelings. Our soul is the physical appetite that we have to do things, not necessarily to eat, but to do things. Our soul also is the place where we have all our addictions and our desires. And some of you may sit there and think, well, I don't have any addictions. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. But we all have a sense of an addiction. Some of us work too much. Some of us are thrill seekers, and that's an addiction also. Some of us need a lot of attention. It's an addiction. Some of us need to be helpers. We want to fix everything. So stop and think, what is your addiction? Our soul is the control center of our life, and it will always impact our daily reactions. How we react in every moment of our life is impacted by the concept of our soul. Our soul is the spiritual essence of us. It's our identity, our personality, and our memories. And so the deepest part of our soul is those memories that we carry with us day in and day out. Our soul is the control center of our body and our heart. So some of the aspects of the soul are to have peace, to have love, to have purity, joy, bliss, power, and wisdom. So those are all the things that we perceive the soul to be that are on the one side. But you see, there's a flip side to our soul also. Every one of us has at some time seen someone that's totally worn out, that feels dried up, that's torn down and burnt out. That soul part of them feels burnt out. You see, this might be us. It might be ourselves. I sometimes feel like that when I feel desperate or in despair or feel betrayed. When our body is in pain, our soul can be really irritable. So do you find yourself irritable at times? So stop and think, what pain am I carrying? Sometimes it's not physical pain, it's mental pain. When our soul is in conflict, we can be judgmental. So where in your life are you in judgment? And the reason you're in judgment is because you don't accept somebody or something the way it is. You want it to be different. And you think your opinion is better than theirs. So therefore, you create judgment about them or about whatever's going on. When our soul is tired, we start making poor decisions. And when our soul is out of sorts with God, we may even start feeling guilty or ashamed. And then our body may feel sick and our spirit may feel broken. Lots of times we feel frustrated, we feel unloved, we feel depressed. And all those aspects are also part of the soul. That's the flip side of it. And I'm sure we've all been there. But you see, our soul's desire is for us to grow in awareness and be able to raise our consciousness so that we can improve the quality of our life. Now, our soul is the purest form of energy that we have in us. All of us vibrate at some kind of energy, and that energy creates the frequency of our life. Since everything is energy, what we experience in life is created by the frequency of our soul energy and vibrations. Whether we receive those vibrations or we're sending out those vibrations from us. Each time we think, we vibrate at a certain frequency. And all like thoughts create a cluster of like vibrations. And those vibrations create a specific frequency and vibrations. Those vibrations are drawn to us. So we either draw fear or confidence to us. We can draw prosperity or poverty. We can create sadness in our life or happiness. We draw loneliness or love. All those things that are drawn to us, all are on the basis of our thoughts. There's no exception. Everything that comes to us is the frequency that we put out there and draw those things to us. So hear that. We draw the things that come into our life to us. We think about things all the time. So are you thinking of things that you want or that you don't want? We are told that the majority of the time we focus on things we don't want or that we don't have. And because we create our reality through our focus of our thoughts, like I said, we draw those things to us. Our focus is the intention of our thoughts. And our thoughts create a vibration that creates a frequency. And whatever frequency we are vibrating at, we attract the results of that frequency. See, research shows us that on any given day, thoughts are usually exactly the same as they were yesterday. So stop and think about that. Are you thinking the same thoughts today that you were thinking yesterday? Are you thinking the same thoughts over and over again? See, that means that you are truly reliving every day to be the same and nothing changes. Because the majority of these thoughts are past regrets, limiting beliefs, dissatisfaction with our life, or fear of something going to happen or that did happen. Know that what you are feeling, because that feeling is the frequency that you are sending out, and you will attract to yourself the results of that frequency. Do you know that you can change all this? By understanding that your sole focus is the frequency that you use to attract the things into your life. Think for a moment. Are you attracting the things that you want or don't want? Are you focusing on what you want to happen, or are you focusing on what you don't want to happen? We are the ones that can change the vibration frequency of our soul. And only we can change that vibration in our own soul. It's our responsibility to do that. You see, our soul has two major desires. The first is to have a connection to its Creator. All of us want to feel that connection with our own Creator. And the second part of that is to express its spiritual qualities of personal freedom. That's what our soul craves, personal freedom. But you see, we've been given personal freedom by our Creator. We've never been put in bondage. Freedom is our birthright. It's the birthright of every living soul. We all intellectually know this. We all intuitively feel this. Our inherent nature is forever seeking to express itself in terms of personal freedom. Most of us take advantage of our civil freedoms, yet we disconnect ourselves from the freedom of spirituality. How many times have you blamed someone else or something else for the troubles and the situations that are created in your life? Well, when we embrace the idea of personal freedom, we recognize that it is never anyone else's fault, because we, and we alone, are always at choice. That's our responsibility. And some of us feel like, well, I'm not making a choice about what's going to happen to me. But the concept of not making a choice is still making a choice. You're making a choice that not to choose. The truth is, we all feel. We make a choice how to feel. And we make a choice how to react to every situation. And see, then those are the vibrations that we put out. And then we experience the results of those vibrations. Like I said, our soul's freedom is a gift from our Creator. It's never taken away from us. No matter what we do, what has happened in our life, it's never taken away from us. And it works for us no matter where we are. Therefore, we have the freedom to choose, and we also have the freedom to respond to any situation that comes into our life. In doing so, we co-create our life and our world by embracing the freedom that is all around us, and by creating our boundaries against that freedom. I'm always in choice. I allow myself to have that freedom, or I put up the limitations and the boundaries against that freedom. I think some of you have read how come, in Africa, they'll take a great big elephant and tether it and tie it to a tiny little stick, and that elephant won't go anywhere. And that's because when that elephant was a baby, they had a big spike, and they tied that elephant to a great big stick. No matter how hard that elephant tried to get away, it couldn't bend that stick, break that stick, so it didn't get away. So when that elephant grew up, it still believed that it was tied to that stick. Even though that elephant could break that stick when it grew up, it had an unrealistic barrier, and it didn't try to free itself. So what unrealistic barrier is stopping you from your personal freedom? What self-imposed limitations have you placed in your own way? Whatever the conditions are that you're keeping in yourself, they are keeping you a prisoner in your own mind. Remember Nelson Mandela. He spent many years in a prison, many, many years. And when he was released, he was asked, how does it feel to be free? And he said, I've always been mentally free. I've been free in my mind, even though I've been in a physical prison. Nobody could control my mind. My spirituality was always free. It was free to think and react in any way I wanted. See, when we recognize that that is a part of us that has never been hurt or harmed in any way, we break our agreement with the concept of us being a victim. We give ourselves permission to recreate our lives by changing our opinion and our belief about what has happened to us. We give ourselves permission to change the situation that we existed in. In every moment, we have the choice to be free. In every moment, we have the conscious choice to direct or change the circumstances of our life. Our divine heritage, the freedom to choose and the freedom to change, that's what's been created in us. This teaching, the science of mind, tells us the same thing. It says the same thing as every spiritual teacher alludes to. The fact is, freedom is tied into the concept of self-expression through choice. We are the dreamer, manifesting our own dream. There was a cartoon I read a long time ago, and I saw it. And this man is having a nightmare. And there's this monster at the foot of his bed. And this monster is just about ready to grab him. And the man says to the monster, "What are you going to do with me?" And the monster replies, "I don't know. It's your dream. What do you want me to choose to do with you?" So the truth is, it is our dream that we're having. And we have the freedom to choose our reality. If we don't like what we're experiencing, we have the power to change it. Ernest Holmes teaches us that there are no limits to our capacity to think. He encourages us to use our thoughts and raise our consciousness. In other words, think thoughts that are life-affirming and move those thoughts into a deeper understanding of your relationship with Spirit. I want to explain some thoughts that I had and some limiting beliefs. When I was studying to be a minister, I didn't think that I was smart enough to write those exams, and I thought, maybe you're just a little bit too old. And one day my brother came up to visit me, and I was talking to him about all these thoughts that I was having. And he said to me, "You're going to get old anyway. It doesn't really matter. And just because you were called stupid at school doesn't mean that you're still stupid. So what you need to do is finish your ministerial studies. And if you don't want to be a minister, you don't have to become one. But don't limit your thinking and make that decision today because you're scared to write the exam." And that is the truth. I was scared to write the exam. But I want to go a little further with that. There is something in us, in our soul, no matter who you are. You're resonating with some kind of frequency. I didn't know I wanted to be a minister. I took this teaching on a lark. Somebody told me to come to class. I never even came to church to start with. I started a class in the second year of class because I had nothing to do on Tuesday night. I just got divorced, and I thought, well, I'll just do that. One thing led to another. In my fourth and fifth year, there was nobody teaching Science of Mind here in Red Deer. So I had to go to Edmonton. So for 2 years, I went to Edmonton. Still, it was kind of, well, it was something to do Monday nights. Just go to Edmonton and take a class. As I was studying, it got more and more serious. But I still wasn't sure because no matter what I thought, I didn't think I could pass that exam because they had so many words that were the same. And I couldn't spell half of those words. There was no way I could do that test. And it wasn't really sinking into my head. It just wasn't. The words that were used were too hard for me to comprehend. Anyways, one day when I was flying home from Asilomar, there was a magazine. Somebody had given it to me, and on the cover, it said, "Spirituality is taken to Russia." A bunch of Unity ministers are going to Russia. We were religious science. We weren't even that group. And it said you had to be a minister to go. So I took it upon myself, say, well, I think I'd like to go to Russia. So I took it upon myself to phone them and say if I could go. I wasn't a minister, but I was in my 5th year. But because I could talk Russian and Ukrainian and Polish, they decided to let me go because there wasn't a lot of interpreters. So when I asked our teacher in Edmonton if I could go to Russia for 2 weeks, she told me no. You can't miss any classes. So Reverend Tim, at that time he wasn't a reverend, he said, well, if all of us miss the class for the next 2 weeks, maybe Valentine can go. Well, it was really hard for the minister to say no, because see, 4 of us came from Red Deer and 4 of us from Edmonton. So 6 people, including me, said, well, that would be nice. There was a couple that said no. So, of course, it was a vote. So they stopped classes for 2 weeks. I got to go to Russia. And I was really very fortunate because the minister that I was assigned to, Dr. Tom Sanders, he was the instructor. And so there was a 45-minute ride to where we were studying or where we were teaching. And I had to ride with him back and forth with him. And when he talked in English, I translated it to Russian. And you know what? By listening to it in English, translating it to Russian, in those 2 weeks, I learned deeply the concept of religious science, the concept of our teaching. And when we got back, or I got back, it was a week before the exam. So we had to write the exam in Edmonton, and a minister from the States came up to give us the exam because our current minister was not allowed to give us the exam. It had to be somebody else. And that minister asked our minister, how do you think your students will do? And she said, everyone will pass except Valentine. I heard her say that. But you know what? I passed. So when I'm trying to tell you that whatever your soul wants, vibrates at, the universe, creator, makes it possible for you. So when you think it's not possible, there's too many obstacles, there's too many limitations, it happens. If you trust, because you see, that vibration of me being a minister had to be somewhere inside my soul, and I wasn't even aware of it. You see, our soul has a need to express the flow of life, to know that we are one with it, and to have it demonstrated in our life. We all have a need to create, to build, to grow, to prosper. You all have those inner needs. Your soul craves them. We have a need to love and be loved. See, that love is in us. And if we're not loving it, we're blocking it. We have a need to express ourselves authentically. I don't know about you, but the worst time in my life is when I'm not expressing myself authentically. When I'm trying to be someone else who I'm really not. And I got to share this with you. Many years ago, I'd started dating a guy, and I was always going out, and he was inviting me to his place, and he'd cook these nice meals and all that. So one day I decided, well, I have to invite him to my place and cook him a nice home-cooked meal. Well, all of yous know I don't cook. So I had to ask a friend to come over and cook the meal. She did. She cooked this beautiful meal, even set the table. But you see, that isn't in my soul nature. It was very stressful to me. And how long do you think it took him to realize, even though I pretended I cooked the meal? How long do you think it took him to realize, as we dated, that I don't really cook? You see, when you put yourself in that kind of stress, when you try to be somebody you're not, it doesn't work very well. You see, we have a need to be physical, to enjoy ourselves, to have great health, to have our bodies express who we are. All of our bodies express our individuality. We have a need to have peace of mind and to be created and centered in the midst of our change. We have a need to be joyful and to move forward. Know that if your thoughts are not vibrating with the deepest vibration of your soul and your heart, you won't be able to sustain them. So do you think I could sustain that concept of cooking? There was no way. Because it doesn't vibrate in the core of my being or in my soul. And you know what? As a kid, even when I was a kid, every time my mother cooked, she'd tell me, get out of the kitchen. You're just a nuisance. My sister became the great cook. And when I go into her kitchen, she tells me, get out of the kitchen. So that idea is just really implanted in my mind. Even when I try to cook, somehow I screw it up. So because that vibration isn't in my soul. And when I was writing this sermon, there was places I had to laugh because I thought about things that, I want to do this and I want to do that, but how come it never works out? And then I realized it's not my soul vibration. Those of you who know me hear me say, I think I should take cooking classes, right? Gail has heard me say that 20 times, but I never seem to register for a cooking class. I go to Gail's place and she cooks beautifully. It's not that I don't want to. It's not my soul vibration. See, our mind cannot sustain loving thoughts about ourselves if deep within us we are vibrating with self-judgment. Our mind can't sustain thoughts about being abundant if deep within we are vibrating with feelings of unworthiness. We cannot feel capable and confident if deep within we are vibrating about doubt and insecurity. We cannot have a fulfilling, intimate relationship if deep within we are vibrating at our very core with fear and mistrust about that. If we want to change what we are experiencing, we have to change our soul's vibration into a different frequency. If you want to raise your soul's vibration to a different frequency, I suggest you write a list of why I can't questions. Like, why can't I have prosperity? Why can't I have loving relationships? Why can't I have joy in my life? Why can't I cook? And then, instead of saying, why can't I? You need to change that question to, why don't I? Instead of asking, why can't I? Because if you ask, why can't I? The universe just gives you reasons of why you're not doing something. But if you ask the universe, why don't I? Then the universe gives you those reasons. So why don't I have prosperity? Why don't I have a loving relationship? Why don't I have joy in my life? So ask the why don't I questions. Then take some time to contemplate each question on your list and see what awareness and what vibrations are in you and what vibrations have to change in you. What has to become different for you to be able to understand why you don't, if that is something that you really want. So as you do this, you can make your life more vibrant by constantly reaching beyond your comfort zone. I guess I'd have to really reach beyond my comfort zone to cook. Sometimes the reaching is very exhilarating And sometimes it's terrifying. But it's always rewarding. Because in the end, it's the freedom that enables us to become the person that we are meant to be. So today, ask yourself those questions. Your soul vibrates at that high frequency. So I'm going to share something else with you because of this sermon, I have made myself decide that I am going to ask those questions. Because a little over a year ago, my business burnt. I used to have a fitness center called Body Basics, and I had a huge fire at Body Basics. And every time I've decided I'm going to fix it, somebody has come up and said, well, you can't do that. You have to wait till the winter's over because the blocks might have frozen, they're going to expand, and da-da-da-da. And you're too old to do that. If you were 20 years younger, you could probably do that. And it's going to cost a lot of money, and you didn't have insurance, and on and on and on. And I'm listening to all those things that people are telling me that why I shouldn't rebuild Body Basics. But somewhere in the depths of my soul, I can feel Body Basics being rebuilt. I can see it in my mind being rebuilt. Even though it's going to cost a lot of money, that doesn't bother me. So when I go home, because I came up with these questions while I was driving, I am going to ask myself, why don't I? Because there has to be a reason why my soul keeps wanting to, and my intellect and the people around my life keep telling me, no, you shouldn't do that. No, you should retire. You're getting too old. That getting too old is really bugging me. Because I don't think I'm too old. My soul doesn't think it's the age it is. So know that your soul, the essence of who you truly are, is always vibrating for your highest good. So trust it. And embrace it. And really understand that whatever that soul craves, it is meant for you because it would not pass you by. All of us crave different things. We're not all the same. Some of us are musicians. Some of us are great cooks. Some of us are great ministers. Some of us aren't. I got to tell you this minister joke. Minister dies, and so does the pilot die. And they go up to the pearly gates, and they're met at the pearly gates, and the pilot goes in, and he's cheered on, and St. Peter says, how wonderful you did on earth, and everything like that. And then the minister's turn to goes through, and he's not cheered on, and St. Peter kind of says, just go over there, you'll do just fine. And so the minister asks, St. Peter says, St. Peter, how come everybody cheered him, and they were glad that he showed up, and you're glad that he showed up? And St. Peter says, well, it's how many people prayed in your presence. And the minister kind of looks at that, and St. Peter says, well, when you preached, the people fell asleep. But when he flew his plane, people prayed that they'd land. So I hope you didn't sleep. I hope you got this. And know that your soul is the greatest thing you have. And so it is.